plan. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Those were wonderful, and we had a lot of good images in that group. Wonderful. Thank you. So I'm going to be introducing Doug Rundle. Doug Rundle is a Portland-based photographer whose love of the medium began early, inspired by his father and uncle. His father introduced him to the magic of developing film and making prints at home, while his uncle was part of the Bay Area photography community and knew Ansel Adams and Edward Weston. Doug's photography reflects both energy and a thoughtful artistic focus. He is especially drawn to the natural landscapes, from sweeping scenes to quiet details, and his images have been featured by Yosemite Reserve, Patagonians, the Cleanest Line blog, American Rivers, Bay Nature, and other environmental and conservation organizations. Doug is a PPF member, and Doug is having a photography show coming up in August at the Portland Japanese Garden. And so PPF is planning an outing to see Doug's show, and the show is called A Second Look. So that'll be exciting. We're delighted to have Doug here to share his photographs and the stories behind them. So it's your turn, Doug.
Kathy, you need to stop sharing your screen.
Oh, yeah. Good idea.
And then Doug can take over. Thank you.
I'm so excited about him
All right.
presenting.
Kathy, thank you for that generous introduction. I appreciate it. So I have a short presentation tonight, and it's about White Sands, New Mexico. I had a chance to go there in April, just a couple months ago, my first visit. And it's a place I'd wanted to go forever, and it proved every bit as interesting as I hoped it would be. So for the most part, I will let my images speak for themselves, and just a couple of introductory comments. At the beginning of my presentation, there's a couple of slides of footprints. The first footprint is a contemporary footprint that I found in the sands and took a photograph of. And the second one is a photo supplied by the National Park Services, and it shows footprints that are 20,000 years old that exist at White Sands. So it's a place that's had human beings crossing back and forth for a very long time. And one of many things that makes it an interesting place. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Let's see. And then the other thing I'll mention is towards the end, I've included some slides of an interesting little town on the way between coming home from White Sands to the airport in Albuquerque, a little town called Carrizozo. And I took some photographs there, and I'll talk a little bit about that at the end. It's a sort of a ghost town that's become an interesting artist's enclave. But with that, let me go ahead and get started here. Oh, and by the way, the music, so please listen, make sure your sound is up. The music is lovely, and it was supplied by my daughter, Deirdre. pause it here just to introduce the next, the ending set of slides, which are about this little town called Carrizozo, which was really a southern New Mexico dying little ghost town until a couple came by about 10 years ago to try to make it into a little artist town. And they opened up a photography gallery and a sculpture and art gallery, two different galleries, opposite sides of the road. And they've been making a go of it. And it's a very quirky, interesting town. But the photo gallery there is the largest photography gallery in the state of New Mexico. And it's the center of a annual photography contest that the state has. So it's kind of an interesting little place. And its mascot is the burro. So you'll see a few artistic burros in this next series. And that's it.
Wow. Those were absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
Wonderful images.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, Doug, I have a couple. The scenes with the white sand dunes, but at the bottom are, flat areas that have undulating waves in them. How were those formed? Do you know? Are those ancient, or are those from wind, or what are those from?
They're ancient layers that have been probably formed by wind and compressed by the weight of sand. And then I think as the dunes have moved on. They've left these interesting patterns, and those will come and go. They'll be covered up and then exposed again, and it's just one of the unique features of how the sand sort of moves around and reforms over time.
And then my other question was, are the plants, do they spread by seed or are they like a corm or something that is underground?
I think it's mainly by seed, like the one of the main plants there, the yucca plant, has that little stalk in the middle that has flowers and releases seeds. So I think that's mainly how they do it.
And then are you what kind of camera are you using for these?
I have a Sony mirrorless camera.
The music was beautiful, Doug.
Oh,
Must be proud of your daughter. That was wonderful.
Yeah, she's on the call, so give her a round of applause if you enjoyed it.
I did. Very nice.
Yay, great job.
All right. Well, thank you all very much.
We would
Appreciate-
like to say thank you, Logan and Fretta. We really enjoyed your photographs. They were beautiful. You look like you had a lovely time taking them. It was a great experience to walk through the sand with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm. Okay. All right. I have the pleasure of introducing our next speaker, who's Jennifer Spelman. Jennifer is a documentary photographer, educator, and workshop leader whose work reflects both strong artistic vision and a real connection to the people and places she photographs. Her travels have taken her to Cuba, Iraq, Turkey, Morocco, India, Romania, Spain, Mexico, Japan, and Vietnam, with Cuba becoming an especially important part of her creative life through more than 50 visits. I'm just tired listing all those. She also shares the experience through her teaching, including her work with the Santa Fe workshops, helping other photographers develop their eye and deepen the way they engage with the world through her images. Please join me in welcoming Jennifer Spelman. Jennifer, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Hi, Kathy.
Excited.
Thank you so much.
Hi. We're so excited to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you all. And Doug, I enjoyed your images. I spent 20 years in New Mexico and never got to spend enough time within White Sands. And you made me like feel the sand. I wanted to go back there. So thank you. And
Thank you.
everybody's images. I had such a haywire day today, and I got to arrive onto this Zoom right as the music was playing through your members' photography.
Mhm.
And it was the first time all day that my shoulders relaxed, and
Mm.
I got to feel a little bit of who this group is. Those pictures were threaded with all kinds of adventure and soul, and it's wonderful. So, thank you all so much for having me tonight. I believe a lot in community and collaboration, and it's important to not just work in a void all by yourself as a photographer. So, thank you all for making time tonight to come out. And we
Thank you
can
for being here.
dive right into my images if I can figure out how to share my screen. How's that look? Can everybody see it?
Yeah, let me see if I
Yep.
can make it bigger. There we go.
Okay, so when Kathy talked to me about presenting to you all, and I sent her the title of Tell Me About Your Trip in 3 images or 3 million, I didn't actually expect anyone to take me up on the idea of 3 million, but when Kathy and I met a few days ago to practice our Zoom, I mentioned to her that I could probably go for at least 6 or 7 hours tonight. And she just laughed. And so I hope you all are ready. I know everybody knows about editing images and how I'm only teasing. I will get you out of here early. It's almost 11 here my time, so I'm had a few espressos. This is the kind of pictures I made in a former life. I used to work for a district attorney's office in investigations, and I made some really bad out of focus pictures for evidence presentation, and they sent me to Santa Fe photo workshops, and it kind of changed my life. I ended up changing my whole career, and this is the first photo I ever made that captivated me. I know everybody's got their one. I took a leave of absence from the district attorney's office. And went on a semester at sea aboard a ship and took my dad's old Canon AE1 camera and learned to develop film in the bottom of this ship that had 600 college students on it. And I remember looking at this picture in the tray, and it was the first time I really felt grabbed by photography. So I moved to Santa Fe after taking a few Santa Fe workshops. I fell in love with not just photography, but the whole creative process that was happening. I wanted to live and breathe it. And I walked away from 8 years and a degree in criminalistics and 8 years at the DA's office and tried to start over and took workshops from a ton of different people. And this was a workshop with Sig Harvey, and it was the first time I was starting to learn about metaphor. I went on a documentary photography project to Mississippi, and this was the first time I really tried engaging with strangers, and people couldn't have been more kind and more welcoming. A lot of the early work I did was really conceptual. I liked that idea of having control over each piece, and I think all these things you build as a photographer, the more things you try, like if you love running around the world, being stuck at home, having to do still lifes teaches you something about yourself. So this is from my home, old home, New Mexico, and I wanted tonight to feel like an invitation. And this is the picture I took right before I moved to Wilmington, North Carolina. The first time I came to visit here, when I landed, that happened on the plane, and it convinced me that it was a place I wanted to be. So tonight, I wanted to take you guys onto an adventure and try to explain what it's like to have been to Cuba. It's not just over 50 times, it may be closer to 100. They're month-long trips, layered sometimes with trips to India, Japan, all over the world, sliced together. And how I try to make sense of that work and how it's changed over the years. I feel like it was much more controlled when I started, and this picture is part of what changed my photography. That guy in the sunglasses is Carlos Otero, and I work together with him a lot in Cuba. He's a really wonderful photographer. And those two kiddos lived and worked on a farm near his home. And I gave that little girl my camera, and she threw it on self-portrait. And I looked at her pictures later, and I thought they were more alive and better than the pictures I had made. And that's a really crazy thought after you've spent 15 years trying as hard as you can to make serious photography, that a kid can take a camera and make something that feels more alive. And that idea started to kind of shift my photography. I started working mainly with an iPhone, and I wanted to be as unencumbered in the world as I could be. I went from being really weighed down on a lot of equipment, sometimes taking multiple cameras, to moving much more nimbly. And I always love trying to find a new way to photograph the Taj Mahal. This is a picture out the ferry in Turkey, and I really love moments like this where you have to be so present that you know the bird is going to fly by, but you don't raise your camera too soon because you don't want that guy to turn and to look at you. And in those moments, I feel more present, I think, than any other time in my life. I wanted to try and share a few new ideas. They're really raw, and this is the fun of sharing, I think, with other photographers. I love the idea of conversation between photographs and how places that aren't connected have that kind of conversation. And so I wrote this earlier. I traveled 1,000 miles looking at remarkable things, yet what stayed with me were two disappearances. A woman hidden behind prayers, a monument hidden inside a reflection. Perhaps beauty has never loved being captured, perhaps it loves being discovered. And so I love when things have like not just similar shape and palette, but they also all of a sudden speak to each other. And this has that same idea under it. I think it's less about either of these as individual images, but the ideas under them captivate my soul. The picture on the left came from the tiniest little village in India where they put on this magic show, and everybody goes out and they create these incredible things that are actually really hard to understand how they work. And this idea of balance and fragility, and this image on the right that has the same kind of visual structure and is about worship and also ideas of structure and strength and how they play together. And my favorite thing to do with my images is to print out hundreds of them and start to figure out how they have those kind of conversations. So I didn't make them all as diptychs tonight, but I love the idea of how things interact. And I also like really trying to go to iconic places and figure out how I can put my own stamp to them. I don't know if anybody's ever been to these Tory Gates, but the true trick of this image is not the scarf floating in it. It's the fact that there's not a million people in the picture. I had to get up at like 5 a.m. or whenever. I was the first person, I'm sure, in line, and I had to run really far in to get to this point where I could just be alone with the gates. And that's the great thing of what we do as photographers. Like, why would you ever do that otherwise? And I remember that's a scarf that my mom made for me, and I brought it all the way there, and it made such a cool corkscrew. I love those kind of moments. This is a recent picture from Iraq, which I'll talk about more in a moment, but I love that photography helps me see moments like this, kindness, like when people are extending a hand. And a friend told me before I spoke tonight, he said, make sure you give them at least one takeaway, that there's something that they leave tonight with. And I thought about that for a little while, actually. And my takeaway to everybody is that in 20 years of bounding around this world, I've only found people to help me. I've really never had a bad experience. I've never been robbed. I've never have. The world is a lot safer than the news wants to make it out to be. There's a lot of people having a really rough time, but I feel safe moving just about anywhere in this world. So this is from my home state of New Mexico, Turkey. I like the idea of the people that we make larger than life and who those people are and why they're celebrated. Those ideas pause me all over the world. This is Arian Chang. I'll talk a little bit more about him later. If you don't know his photography, he's brilliant, brilliant Cuban photographer. I like when fish look like stars, and this is the fun of the fun of the iPhone, that it makes it so easy to be able to actually get in and actually be a part of things. And I think that's part of what I love about it, that I used to feel more removed when I had my camera sometimes, and this lets me sit underneath things and feel the pull of them. I'm really captivated by when palettes speak with each other. When, I don't know if you guys have ever arranged your images by like Pantone, but there's different ways to look at them that way. And I like the conversations that happen there. So this is the loosest selection of photos that I've ever shown, but I wanted to try and be honest to the way that my photography became more fun, I think, when I really made it reflect who I am. And I was never going to be somebody who was going to have a series of exactly 18 images that were all regimented and the same. And working with the iPhone and going to places sometimes really off the tourist path, I think have let me explore all of that. I included this one to say I like the ability we have with our cameras to like create obscurity when things are hard to see. And watching a bullfight was really hard for my heart to watch. And so I try to make that match within my photography. And this was a wild fireworks celebration in San Miguel. And this is where I'm having fun putting my iPhone through its paces. I'll hold it up after I'm done speaking and show it to you all, but it mortifies everybody. It's cracked. It's still a 14. I'm all about trying to use kind of like the every person tool right now and to see how far you can take it. And this is after a world of carrying the biggest, heaviest SLRs for a really long time in life. That's San Miguel de Allende on the left, and that's behind the stage at Tropicana on the right, where I've gotten to be many times. And it's a wonderful place as a color photographer. San Miguel de Allende. This was about ideas of like what fashion means, and what does it mean what are the things that are put on display and how we do them? And what is the feeling of like an exclamation? I love when pictures are too big for the frame. Like when I can't, in the moment, I know there's a problem and it's a wonderful problem that I have no idea where to cut things off. And this is a picture, I think this was actually on a timer and these kids pushed the button on it. I can see the evolution of my iPhone along the way, and I can share that because we're all photographers here. And the fun part of being on the front end of the iPhone is I can see how quickly it's catching up, but I can see the softness in some of the beginning ones, versus now the later generations that are starting to get sharper and sharper. It's fun to outsource your photography. Gave this to these kids, and just like that girl, they will always make a cooler portrait of themselves as a group than I could ever make. And that's humbling. I have taken a lot of portrait classes, but I like this better than anything I did of them that day. And the opposite, moments that feel so hyper still when it's not all bursting out of the frame and you're so in tune that you can actually feel the rhythm like of the waves of a place. This is a series I did in Baracoa, Cuba, as close to a series, I guess. I got stuck one time there for like 3 days with it just pouring rain. And I finally wised up to, instead of facing the streets, to start riding around in cars and photographing out the windows. And this is one of my favorite images just because it was so darn lucky. I wasn't there that long, and every once in a while, all these things conspire in the exact right way you need them to if you're willing to slow down and actually pay attention. This had that same feeling to me. It was such a millisecond slice before they all lined up. And again, I'm having a really fun time trying to put my iPhone through the craziest situations I can to see how much it can handle versus carrying an SLR. This is India and San Miguel, Mexico again. Actually, I think this is in Guanajuato during a parade. Again, one of those moments where you just start looking at all the elements and driving out of the car window, but I loved the emotion of it. This was another one that I wanted to just read something that I had like written about it. The map insists that these places are separate, but magenta seems unconvinced. I don't know if you guys have certain colors that like reappear a lot in your work, but there's this hypercolor magenta sometimes that I find over and over, and it thrills me. Like I know the exact Pantone feeling of it. This is in Istanbul. There's really cool cisterns underneath the city, and they change color. One of the neatest places structurally I think I've ever seen in the world. I couldn't, very, very cool. I like when notes of a place infuse the way I want to photograph it. So Japan feels very structured and very orderly to me compared to Cuba, that's always kind of pushing at the seams, or India. And so I try to make pictures that are dependent on that, that feel particular, just light that I liked and lines. This is an image from Iraq, and one of the most beautiful places I have ever been. And inside of this temple, this one guy at like 2 a.m. was changing the light bulbs, and I couldn't believe it. They keep it open 24 hours a day. And I was so enchanted with this place. At like 1 in the morning, I couldn't sleep, and I walked 3 blocks back. And this was the reward for getting up in the middle of the night, that you see the guy who actually takes care of the place. And what a grand job, right? Like you have infinite job security here. This is Santiago, Cuba, and just ideas about light. Turkey, Santa Fe, and back to Iraq. I own a company called One World Scene, and it started out as we published magazines in the very beginning, and I'll show you a few of those issues. And then we later started leading trips to Cuba. And earlier this year, I declared with gusto that I was going to lead trips only to misunderstood countries, so that I was going to go to Iraq and Cuba. And unfortunately, that's going to be harder than I thought. But Iraq was a place that I still am processing. I'm not even sure exactly how to speak about it right now. It was darn near the kindest place I've ever been in the world. Not for a single second did I feel nervous for my safety. On the contrary, like things would happen, people would give us free ice cream everywhere we went. And it was a place I really, really loved to go back to. And I hadn't spent a lot of time in the Middle East before this. And I was there last November for the last time. So I don't know when I'll get back exactly, but this shifts us back to Cuba. And like a lot of people, I love photographing hands. I love seeing what people are willing to share with me and show me. I pick up things everywhere. I think part of being a photographer is it makes you curious. And I've learned, sort of like when you're talking about Doug's, the tactileness of that sand, that sometimes my photos become better when I feel the texture of the world around me. This is back to Havana. And ideas of when either the weather or a person exclaims for you, when you get that sense of real humanity or life coming through, those things always pause me and make me excited. I love balconies. I've spent a lot of time on Cuban balconies. I don't know if this is apparent what it is or not, but this is that small festival in India again, in a town nobody would have ever heard of, and they paint their cows, and it looked almost gold. And this is what's attached to that, just so you can see. But I thought it was so special, and I love the gusto the whole world has to celebrate different things. Oh, got that one twice. Like again, when moments align in totally different places, but they spark an idea of another place that I've been before. This is a rare moment that I wish I would have had time to stop what I was doing and just stay. This is in the Sahara Desert, and it was a random moment when it had rained enough that I got to watch a guy kiteboard there. And I have never seen somebody kiteboarding in the Sahara in all the times I've been there. And I would have loved nothing more than to kiteboard that day. I like when the world is mysterious. The really sweet, tender moments that people will let me into. The different moments of spirituality that I'm led into. This is a really recent picture from Bhutan where I just was. This picture, I don't know if I'd write home about it as an image, but I'm sharing it tonight because it was one of the pictures that changed my mind about using my iPhone. It was one of the first times I started using the volume up button to make pictures. And I don't know if you guys have ever triggered your iPhone with other ways other than pushing the shutter, but it lets you get into moments closer sometimes without stepping on them. And that was a moment when I also decided that was a tool I really wanted to play with more. This haywire red color feels a little like that haywire magenta color to me. I love it when it's color so intense, it's almost going off the spectrum. And anybody who is like a type 1 photographer by the pixel right now probably has their skin crawling at the like overblown highlights. This is the difference of me having to have been a complete technician for so many years in life, and now sometimes liking when things push outside the register and thinking that's the way that light felt. Or it's fun to challenge all these tools and see how many different types of light they can contain in one frame and actually be able to handle. This is Havana as well. I guess my favorite thing to do in life is when I'm not working someplace and I have free time to just wake up early in the morning, catch that really angled light, and see what happens through swatches of light. This is all a bigger section on Cuba. It's another place that feels tender right now that I'm not even sure totally how to explain all the feelings I have about what's happening there. I'll just say that I don't know the answer to any of it, but I know that they have their own spirit and passions, and I hope that gets to come through, whatever solution happens for them right now. I've never met a country that has such a unique footprint in terms of the way they take care of each other. I think as a community, Cubans watch over Cubans, and it's come from a lot of adversity along the years. So again, trying to take iconic things. How do you take the old cars that have been photographed so many times and show them in a different way? This is a family that lives in one of the most remote places in Cuba that I've ever been to. You have to take like one of those old military trucks in for 6 hours to get to this place called Alegria de Pio. And it's where the very heart of the revolution and Fidel and all these things were born. But it's also a place that is just super remote. And it's maybe one of my favorite places to spend time in Cuba as well. These are images from my last trip to Cuba. This is something I've never seen before. I was on the eastern part and gas was being rationed. We had to buy black market gas. This is communities actually going out and mining for specks and specks of gold by this little area called Moa. This was also on my last trip to Cuba. And I put in a couple of these that look almost the same, but this is to show the siphoning of gas. And I don't know if you guys have ever siphoned gas or watched somebody siphon gas before. It's awful. Like that tube, you definitely inhale stuff from it. And this is the point that people are operating in there right now. So I wanted to share good things about Cuba as well. And this is the photographer I mentioned earlier, Aryan Chang Castan. He was my first real Cuban friend and one of the best street photographers I've ever met. He lives in New York now, and this is his image to inspire you to go check out his work. He's the one that really made me start to think about timing and can you add something else? There's almost always time to add one more layer into something. He is like a ninja. This is also his work. And the other Cuban photographer you should keep on your radar is Carlos Otero. That's him in the front walking. That's also him in a fish tank. And these are his images. And what I learned from Carlos is the way he honors every one of his subjects. He does a series and he's much more regimented in the way that he works. We work very differently, even though we work together a lot. He lights things and he shoots Cubans all across the island. And to me, that's what shows it. It lets you feel, I think, that these people are not our enemy, that they're 90 miles away and they're our neighbors. So I wanted to share a little bit about collaborative projects tonight too. When the pandemic hit, It was a spooky world for somebody who loves to travel and bounce all over the world. So I started teaching online. I started editing. I never made sourdough bread. But a friend and I decided we wanted to keep in touch with all of our friends in Cuba, and we decided to launch a collaborative project called Cuba Scene. And different photographers who traveled to Cuba through Santa Fe workshops with us submitted photography. Cubans that had worked with us on that side submitted photography. And we put all the work together and we published 9 issues over 2.5 years. And it's the coolest project I've ever gotten to be involved with. And I share it to say if you haven't really collaborated with people, actually done something where you work together on it, um, it makes the whole thing so much more fun. Doug, I loved hearing about your daughter making the music. I things like that I think are really special. The more you can work with other artists who write, who design, um, the designer underneath this project was Cuban. And all of these pictures, I should mention, this is Jorge Gabilondo. These were all submitted images. That's Lacey's Casada on the right, um, Carlos Otero on the left, and Reed Callanan on the right. Became such a fun time for me during the pandemic to take all these. Sometimes we had, I think, upwards of 500 to 1,000 submissions for an issue, and trying to figure out how these images would have conversations with one another. And I thought I'd share one other project, just because it's kind of the antithesis of all the wild color that I showed. This is called Sobre la Tierra Tremula, and this is, I guess, the more serious project that I've made on Cuba. It means above this tremulous earth. And I made this during the pandemic, when I was trying to learn everything I could about zines, and I wanted to try to think about how images again could flow together and trying to figure out how to layer. Cuba is layered and how to create a zine that felt as layered as that. Jose Marti is the national poet of Cuba, and he's kind of the one guy universally all Cubans can agree on. His writing is really, really brilliant, and it spans across love and loss and all kinds of different important themes. And so I used quotes from Jose Marti, but I tried to intentionally push the way that you would think about them being paired. Um, I made sure to do the project in Spanish and in English because I wanted to share it in Cuba as well. And this is again to talk about working with a designer. This gave me an excuse to collaborate with a really good Cuban friend who was an amazing designer, and he helped me figure out how we could make the words feel like what the words said. So this idea of like a solitary crest, an upright plume, waves as warriors. This one again says sobre la tierra, above this tremulous earth. And the one on the right is a writing that was on the beach in this, or on the sand in a path, and it says go this way. And that feels like Cuba to me, that they're always sort of being directed by one force or another for 60 years through the revolution holding, but before that they had Batista. And this was a layered vellum print that I included when I made this zine, again with the idea of trying to figure out how I could infuse it with different layers. A friend, Cotton Miller, who works with Santa Fe Workshops, actually printed it for me and made it textural, like it was on the wall. And I really enjoyed the idea of working three-dimensionally, of trying to rip pictures from one frame to another to see how the pages could interact. And I liked it feeling jagged and rough, and the way Cuba felt in that moment to me. This is another Marti line, the honorable man escapes this world. This was a double page spread. Silence is what my soul craves. And then this was the way the back of that project was layered. And I have no timer, and I didn't start it on my phone, and I have no idea if I was way too fast or way too slow, but that's what I've got for you all, and I'm happy to answer any questions if I can.
I just have a comment. I am extremely moved by your photographs. That was just had such an emotional aspect to them all. And I'm just really moved. Thank you for sharing those.
Thank you for having me.
I would like to say the same thing. I, at the moment, feel that America or our government is being so cruel to the country of Cuba. And then I know that the people there don't deserve it. And my father, when he was in World War II, he traveled through Cuba as an airman, and they had a lovely time. And I have all these beautiful photographs of Cuba that my father took, of things of him being there. And so to think about what we're doing now and what the country has gone through the governments and stuff like that, and how lovely the people are, it's just wonderful that you got to go there and photograph and get to meet all these people. So thank you for sharing.
Thank
I
you,
really
and thanks
appreciate it.
for sharing about your father's images. Those are interesting. You should scan those and yeah, spend time.
Oh, no, it's my father's stuff is very personal to me. So,
That
but
makes sense.
thank you. Yeah. So
What?
will you be going back to Cuba again soon?
Yeah, as soon as I possibly can.
Yeah.
It's
To
hot
have your
there. It's hot there right now, so
right, and there's no
unless I'm thinking
uh,
about trying to create an exchange program of postcards through artists that have been to Cuba and Cuban artists. And if I can do that and get I'd like to do something that's conversational. Again, in this moment when travel is really compressed between our governments and when they can't figure it out, artists have no problem working together. And so,
right. Well, artists are different than the government.
yep, and we're a good bridge, I think, and those bridges are really important in the world right now. Like that's one thing we can do with our imagery. So
I
I hope
agree.
to, and I hope to return and take trips there again and take travelers there in the fall and winter, but it's just real hard to tell right now.
So, of the artists that you know that still live in Cuba, are you in contact with any of them?
Hmm.
So, for what I've been reading in all the news reports, is that there's rolling blackouts and because of our not letting them have oil. Are your friends experiencing that? Uh,
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't been easy in Cuba for a while. They've had just a rough roll since COVID. They've had a harder time rebounding, I think, than a lot of places did. And then their infrastructure is taxed in terrible ways because it's such a caustic environment being that close to the sea. It's super old, it's super outdated, so the equipment's failing on them. They had a hurricane, they've had earthquakes. I mean, they've had all these crazy things that happen there. And that on top of all of the restrictions that are happening right now. I
right.
don't, I'm not the person to really get deep political with any of it, other than to say I'm sad that the people I know, my friends, are stuck in between governments that just can't figure it out, like one way or another. Yeah, they're all experiencing those things. The funny thing about Cubans, though, is they have just this tenacious spirit. And every time I talk to them, like, they're still not beat down. And you think, wow,
Excellent.
they've got 20-hour blackouts going on. You can't keep your refrigerated food. You got to go find food every day. And yet they keep a sense of humor and they take care of one another. They're special. Like they genuinely are a special place because they've taken such a different path through history.
Jennifer, your photographs that strike me the most are the ones that are so funny, that they're so explosively funny. No cartoonist could ever outdo these. It's just like where you find these is just, it's remarkable timing or whatever it is. They're just amazing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We really enjoyed your presentation.
Appreciate it.
Jennifer, what took you the first time to Cuba? What was the reason for going? When I know you've traveled a lot, but that first trip to Cuba, was there any particular reason that you wanted to, I know being a photographer, is that what took you there? Or
Um, I was 21 years old, and that
oh,
ship I was going on around the world took me there as my first stop. And we
oh,
spent 3 days there. And this was in 2001. No, is that right? 2001. So they were just coming out of the special period. It was much tougher, I think, than I totally understood in that moment. And fast forward a decade later, I was working pretty extensively with Santa Fe workshops in Mexico, Japan, a lot of their travel programs, and they had started a program in Cuba. And the director of Santa Fe Reed is really sharp in the way he initiated that program. He connected it into Fototeca de Cuba, which was with the best artists in Havana. And so it shaped our whole program that we connected with them. And so when I started working with him 10 years later, it was really handy because I could say, oh, I know Cuba. I've been there before. And I just didn't go into depth that it was for 3 days, like 10 years ahead of time. But it kind of opened the door to coming back. Weirdly, that trip I took around the world, I went to 12 countries and almost all of them have come back up in life, as things do in all of our lives, the weird way things wind together.
easy.
Oh, may I ask, do you miss your professional camera? Did you get rid of it?
It's still in the closet. I have it. And I'm not anti-camera at all. It was more just after the pandemic. The first time I went to the other side of the world, I went to Romania. We were out when it was like you still needed to show your IDs to get into bars and restaurants. You were wearing masks, and it seemed really cumbersome to have a camera in that moment. And yeah, either Turkey or Romania that first trip. And so I left my camera, and it scared me, and it ended up being really fun. And it made me fall in love in photography in this way that felt okay to go through the experimental process again and to say, they're not all going to be tack sharp. I don't have control over every acute detail at this moment, but it's getting better all the time, and I'm going to be a ninja with it when it's perfect. And I've learned to embrace serendipity enough to just learn every once in a while, like you drop the iPhone and it makes a better picture than the one you were making. And that keeps me humble. I love it. So yeah, I still have a Nikon Z6, Z6 or Z7, that I haven't sold.
Thank you. It's an inspiration, just so much, just everything you showed tonight. Thank you.
Thank you all. Check out One World Scene sometime if you want to travel to Cuba. I'd love to see anybody. I also work with Santa Fe a lot, and we just launched. So One World Scene really had to reinvent itself from doing things in Cuba and Iraq right now. And so we just launched a new collaborative project called Ordinary Days, Extraordinary Times. And it's taking 24 photographers, and we're going to photograph slices of 24 hours in the day across a 12-month time period, and everybody's going to work together on it. And I love doing things like this. So drop us an email at One World Scene if you ever want to try to collaborate on something. We love working with new photographers.
Jennifer, thank you very much.
Very inspirational.
I had at least an espresso before this all, and it's 11:30 right now. So if anybody needs a support group, I'm going to be up all night. If you've got woes with your camera, let me know. Otherwise, thank you all.
Thank you,
Thank
Jennifer.
you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Take good care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Wow. I'm kind of amazed. That was so wonderful. And thank you all for joining this evening.
How did you find her, Kath?
Well, Roxanne, if you all know Roxanne, she works at Santa Fe Workshop. They don't know each other, but she called her and asked her if she was available to speak. And I think they had just met for the first time and online, and she agreed to do it. And it's funny because she spoke as I wanted to know more about her, so I looked her up. And 2 years ago, she spoke, and I watched the video of a group in Alaska, Alaska Photographic Center. She did a lecture there, and she also did a photo. She was a juror for their photo submissions for that group. And I watched that and I saw how good she was. So I was really excited to have her join us. So,
The thing that really struck me was the picture of the Taj Mahal with a little squirrel or whatever it was in front of it.
mhm.
You always see, you know, lovely pictures of the Taj Mahal in travel magazines and everything. This is so different. And then she had another one with a flower. It's to think of doing something like that is, you know, it really is a sort of unique approach.
I agree. And seeing the world and having such a positive attitude about the world, it was pretty impressive too. That that was nice to hear.
And when you haven't traveled the world, you do get kind of nervous of what could happen and all the stories people tell you. And here she wasn't afraid of anywhere she would ever travel, really.
Oh, I know. know.
That was my takeaway.
When I was researching and I saw that she had made 50 trips to Cuba, and then she said, well, really, it was more like 100. I'm like, oh my goodness.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I think I appreciated a lot just her authenticity in
Mhm.
really getting into who the people were and so on. My late husband was Iranian, and I'm
Oh.
just so aware of the huge disconnect between the perception of the Iranians in the world because of the news and because
Mhm.
of their leaders and all that kind of stuff. And she gets really into the nitty gritty with the real people on the streets, and that authentic connection is just
Mhm.
really powerful. I really honor that. It's
Yeah.
really-
And she's looking for the kindness.
right. Yeah.
Mhm.
And she found it,
She did.
that she could go into some place that you would, especially, I don't know if she was going as a woman by herself, but that's pretty scary to do. Especially in a place like Iraq, that everybody thinks everybody's walking around with guns and, craziness. And, that she found kindness and cooperation and was able to make such authentic images is really lovely. So,
Yeah.
yay,
Yeah.
some good news in the world.
Yeah, that was good. I enjoyed that so much.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone. Well, thank you so much. I think it was a good evening, and thanks for joining. And thank you, Doug. for your beautiful images.
Thank you, Kathy.
Okay,
Thank
you
you,
guys.
Kathy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty.
You did
Have a good
great.
rest of the evening. Thank you. Oh, thanks, Logan, for telling me to print share.
It's just the details, you know. It's just
Oh yeah, those details.
But the people, both Doug and I can't remember the young lady who just talked.
Jennifer.
Jennifer. It was Kathy. You did a great job. Thanks.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. You guys have a great evening.
You too.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.